Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Improv Network podcast. This is a series of conversations aimed toward building stronger connections throughout the improv community. I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And we are your education team for the Improv Network. You can go to theimprovnetwork.org to check out all sorts of resources related to the improv world, things like festival listings, virtual, as well as any upcoming live ones. And blogs and interviews, and a improv FAQ tab, which has these conversations archived, as well as lecture series, shorter videos on improv topics as well. So check out all that on the improvnetwork.org. Bob, how are you doing?
Good, man. Good. We're almost to 100 episodes, and I've just realized why I like our theme song so much. Because it reminds me of that old song, the one that goes, "You just keep on using me until you use me up." Bump, 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 bump. Nope.
No.
Yeah, anybody out there knows what that song I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy though that we're almost at 100 episodes.
Right?
We really made a sprint last year.
Yeah, nothing else to do.
Yeah. But enough from us. We're very excited to get to our guest. He's a very good friend of ours. He is, one half of the improv duo Two Man No Show, which I would say gets the award for the most mentioned improv team on this show. He is based out of Toronto, Toronto Second City alum. He is with Bag Dog Theater. He also happens to have... he does some career counseling on the side, including some career counseling sessions with me, which helped me get my new studio job that I started just earlier this year. You might have also seen him as Herb on the Umbrella Academy. Please welcome our good friend, Mr. Ken Hall.
Yeah!
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Hey.
Bob, I love that song, man.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it is, though.
Okay. I'll send it in the private chat after we're done. It's going to be stuck in your head.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, like, wow, this guy Bob, he just sings this song. It kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
It's very telephone diluted version
very
of the song.
It's like, that one song, you just keep on using me until you use me up.
That song about love. You know the song about love. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show, Ken. Very great to have you. We have our first comment from Kurt here. Hey, Kurt. Always good to see you. Saying each of these episodes feels like a workshop. And yes, you do owe us $2,000.
Yes,
Kurt.
And American.
Whoa.
Oh,
that's fired.
I'm glad I'm sitting for that, because that. Let me crunch the numbers on that. That's a whole Canadian, I gotta say.
And speaking of workshops, the topic for this episode is on mindfulness, which is a topic that, Ken, you've been running the workshop on with Bad Dog Theater. For how long did you say you've been doing that for a while, right?
I think just it's over a year now. It was like a year last, I think around May or so, that I had an opportunity to put this together, and I love it. Improv and mindfulness, I think, go hand in hand, or like good improv, involves a lot of mindfulness, being in the moment. And it's interesting of how often, especially as improvisers, we don't spend in the moment. We're often kind of thinking like a few steps ahead,
right?
Like, what's the game of the scene? Like, what are the other moves and such? But I know, again, like playing with Isaac, for example, in Two Man No Show, I'm like, my most favorite moments are where me and Isaac are so connected, so in the moment, connected with our audience as well, and just in that state of play. But there's actually a lot of work that goes into how do we show up to be at ease and to have that accessibility to playfulness and such. Because I grew up, I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with a ton of self-consciousness and fear and nerves and anxiety into the world. And it was only when I was about 30 or so that I jumped into improv classes for the first time. So it was like, oh, it's such a strange environment to live with such negative thoughts and negative feelings for your whole life, and then to experience this oasis of improv, which is like, no, we accept you as you are. And the more that you are in the moment, the more you're helping the collaboration, you're helping the scenes, the dynamic, the ensemble, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a real catharsis for me just to find improv, to discover improv, and the joys of the moment, because it reinforces. It's like the repetition of doing improv reinforces being mindful. And to let go of like, no, I want the scene to go this way. No, it's like, but this is what's happening. This is the reality.
Yeah. Fighting what's happening.
Want all you want. Here we are.
I'll wait for the next offer. Thank you. I'll wait for the next offer, a better offer. Not so much. That's why it's so fun to play with Isaac, because no matter what we do, it's like there's such a wholeheartedness, acceptance of the moment. And we, as both of you can attest, we love to go absurd. I mean, we don't have to, but we often do. And because it's just fun, and it's just so much fun and playful. But again, it's like we got to push through a lot of that negative self-talk and all that messaging and conditioning that we've had throughout our lives. And adults, I think, come to improv almost very on edge and very fixed minds, like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? We're just like,
right.
Play, man. Just play, kids, like they don't think about, are they playing it right?
No.
Are you playing pretend right?
Well, I, in my opinion, I think you and Isaac, both often on stage, are two of the most sincerest people I've ever met. And there's a vulnerability for that. So when you're being mindful and you're being vulnerable, that makes it so much easier to play too. And for the audience to connect to that, because there's the sincerity makes it more easy to relate, because there's not something waiting behind the door. It's just, this is everything. This is what I'm giving you, and we're going to go for this ride. So it almost makes the audience trust you a little bit more. So you can push them a little bit farther.
Yeah, and it's something that we did early on. I appreciate you saying that, sharing that, Bob. That was something that I think we did right from the get-go. We've been a duo, actually, it's been 12 years. This July, it has been 12 years since our first two-man no-show. Back here in Toronto for the Toronto Fringe Festival. And we weren't strong writers back then. So we had a loose show. It was supposed to be a sketch show, but we didn't have great sketches or great jokes. We were in really good stories, like joke tellers, but we're good writers. And so the stuff that we were like, oh, we'll try maybe say this, and it doesn't land, because as I said, we're a little bit green still performing. So we're like, well, let's change it. Let's change it for the audience right here, right now. And so we're like, oh, that joke didn't work. Let's say another one. Okay. So we're not confined to a script. And it's like, we want to bring the audience into the experience. And that again, we're very mindful of what works and what doesn't work. And it's very clown based in that you're like, hey, I proposed something. Oh, they didn't like that at all. Rather than pretend that it's not going well. Because in an improv scene where it's like, and I've been in so many not so great improv scenes over my career. And it's so interesting. The inclination is to not to sweep it, not to edit it, but to almost resist it. I'm like, no, we're going to stay here. No, we are going to stay until we fix this, and nothing, it's just it just goes long in the tooth. And
yeah.
And then me and Isaac are really good at is let's change it. Let's just, and it's a messing with the rules. And it's kind of like, you can do that. Yes, you can, so we want to bring our audience in for the experience. So again, we're very mindful of, are they liking what we're doing? Because if they're not, we will change. We're not beholden to anything. This is not the Olympics. We have not prepared anything or trained in anything. This is created in collaboration with the audience. So we want to bring the audience, we need their inputs. And we're, as you were saying, Bob, there's a sincerity of like, great, let's just rock with it. If this is not working, what do you want? Do you like this? No? Okay. Do you like this? No? Okay. And to not take it personally, although it can be very fun to berate an audience.
Oh, yeah.
There's play behind it, right? But yeah, absolutely.
How do you keep that balance? I mean, one, what comes to mind is that what you just said, I 100% agree with, but like would probably be cautious of telling people early on in their improv learning of like serve the audience. And I think would typically not be the teaching of most schools. In fact, the opposite. Most people, or like I would think it's more common to be like, forget about the audience, just stay connected with your scene partner and the story you're building, and be true to the moment with sort of blinders up. So how do you keep that balance between one, playing freely and staying in the moment without like, still with staying connected with the audience, not alienating them, or not over serving them to the point of just being like, not having enough of yourself in it either?
Yeah, it's a really great question, that, and I think it's a great point. But for me, over the last few years in particular, the more I've done a deeper dive in both mindfulness and especially clown, and clowning is such a huge thing that me and Isaac do, is that I want the audience to inform the direction of the scene. So I'm actually handing over power a little bit to the audience because I want to give them more. And so, for example, for me and Bob are in an improv scene, and like Bob, or like I say something that's funny, and you laugh, James, then I'm like, great, I'm going to do more of that. You indicate that it's like, oh, this is the direction to go in. And for me, following the play, teaching people, like the rules of improv are important for sure, the techniques of improv. But for me, it's like fostering that sense of play, that unbridled play. And I think the people on stage, if they're having fun, it's a big invitation for the audience to join in the fun as well. And I think an audience can join in play easier than story, or perhaps easier than plot. I feel like I have to do a bit of work as an audience member to kind of like, am I understanding this plot or these references and such? But I can understand play. Like Mr. Bean, for example, is so universal in that, and it's like it's playing a game, but with the input of the audience. And you're right, you don't want to go so overboard where it's like it turns into like we're at the expense of the scene. But I think if the underpinning is like fun, like what can you do to show up so that you can play to the best of your ability, so that you can be at more ease, so that you can give yourself these big, bold choices, and to build the play within yourself, build the play with your scene partner or your ensemble, and also bring the audience within that as well. As I said, like it was out of a desperation almost that me and Isaac, when we first started, were like, they didn't think that was funny. So rather than sit in the misery of terrible jokes, it's like, we can correct it now. We can do it. Stop it. We stop this. Stop madness. And so I find like, you're right. So it is that balance. It is that balance. But as I said, I've really been interested over the last few years in particular when I'm teaching improv or public speaking or clown or comedic acting, is to foster the play first, is to begin to like, what can you do to affect how you show up in the first place? And what is your mindset? And how does, because for me, I like to include the audience in my experience rather than try to sort of drive an agenda of this is what the scene is going to be about. For me, I just think it's more satisfying. And for me, and playing with Isaac, it also frees us up to play moments, which I see a lot of beginner improvisers are so bogged down in exposition that they lose the fun, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I kind of, maybe it's just, it's more of it coming at it from the path of least resistance, in the sense I'm like, I want to honor both. You're absolutely right. I want to honor what my scene partner has said, but I want to bring my audience in. So they're almost like a third partner, a scene partner, their input, or their kind of like their immediate direction. They laugh or they don't laugh, or they're listening really intently, is information for me that I get to play with. It's another variable that I can help sculpt, because I know that feeling that I get when I get a laugh, especially early on in a set. And I'm like, oh, that means I can go even bigger, like that means it's almost this thing of like giving me permission to explore even further. And I generally have more fun that way. And if I leave a set where I'm like, I had fun, I generally had fun, and not one of the sets where people come up to you afterwards and be like, did you have fun?
Oh,
That's like,
Yeah.
are you okay?
Yeah.
yeah. How are you?
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah, improv's hard.
Ken, would you say, like, if you were teaching a group from square one, is that a principle or an approach to play that you would start immediately from?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, as opposed to keeping it more advanced or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, well, it's interesting. One of the two things, or maybe a three-pronged approach, is I like to do exercises and help people feel play in their body, and so that you can be in the moment. And if you're doing like a really fun warm-up game, I don't know if you know Mr. Hit. It's a great clown kind of like ensemble building, like we're building the play together. But it's these improv warm-ups that happen so quickly and so fast, because quite often they're like, oh, let's just do a warm-up, right? Get into our bodies and such. But for me, it's like, let's build the play right now. Let's focus in on that play right now. And if you can have that, if you have that experience in your body, you can replicate that in your scenes. And so for me, it's like being really present of like, bibbidi bobbidi boo, or like, like bunny bunny, or like something that you're like, oh, I don't know when they're going to come to me kind of thing. Because when people play those warm-ups, their body, their physicality, their presence, they're so much more in the moment, as they're playing a long form set where people kind of hanging back, arms crossed, leaning up against the wall, waiting for like the scene to go over, and then they step in the scene. So for me, I'm like, I want to give people, foster that sense of play within themselves so that they can replicate it later. And the other thing is to focus on conversation, is like practice active listening. So I've done exercises where I'm like, just have a conversation where you don't have to try and be funny. There's no hidden agenda behind that. And I find like that brings people to the moment, and they are able to access like a real intelligence, a depth of intelligence that we don't often hear. Because quite often, again, I've been there many a time, where I like my early days, I remember like doing shows, and like I'm going to do a show in the kitchen. My kitchen is always the same kind of cupboards as well. I open the cupboard door and there's like one cup or one plate or one apple, and I'm like, well, that's not a great feeling. My imagination is so limited. I try to do about myself. But then I started to think about like, what did I experience in my day? Like what happened on the train to get here? What weird experience did I have? What weird observation did I have in my life? And I find that people often are able to uncork this real like depth of honesty, authenticity, in such that they can bring in, and again, it's an ease to it. So that's the angle that I'm bringing in. And of course, there's the technique as well of yes anding and eye contact and like physicality and object work and such. But for me, I think the real, like the mechanics of a conversation are easier to plug in. And I think if you have experienced play in your body, just as you were when you were a kid, where you're less self-conscious and you're less driven by the agenda of like, I got to get a laugh. It's more of like you're allowing a collaboration of a play to happen much more organically, rather than trying to be like, here's my funny big character or my weird voice or something like that. I feel like you're opening it up to something that's more grounded, and it's about the relationship as well. So you have a conversation with something, I'm like, great, tell me who you are in this. So quite often these conversations are people giving opinions about themselves, their observations. I got a parking ticket. Oh, you know what? Blah, blah. And if you just follow the elaboration of that, then there's a real solid point of view. And then people can riff on that and stay just on that one moment talking about parking and parking fines. That's it. And it's so satisfying. And it's kind of easy in that way. There's nothing you need to add on to it. There's no clever take that you have to have. Just give me your personal experience. Just tell me your opinion about it. And again, so much of improv is making everything matter in the moment and having an opinion about it and wanting the desire to be like, I want to make that matter. And I want to we want to grow this together in a sense. So that I think that's where the fun comes in. So it's my multi-pronged teaching approach is more of that when I'm teaching adults, is like, let's get you playing. You're so hard on yourselves. The self-judgment is really, it's an impediment to finding play. So accepting yourself, accepting the moment, all of these things letting go, forgiving yourself. For me, that's a real thing that puts me in a state of ease. And thankfully, the world of improv is like, it's generally very supportive and non-judgmental. So I feel it. All of those conditions help for people to transform on stage, but also into their personal lives. I remember when I first started doing improv, as I was saying, my default was to say no in life to everything. Do you want to try this? No, I don't. I'm afraid of this. I don't like change. I'm afraid of there's a question mark.
Comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you learn improv early on. It's like, oh, yes, and. And I say yes, and in my scenes, and I start to say yes, and outside of that. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Life is better when I say yes to things. I have more experiences, and so that's a big part of it is, I think, to reframe, to rewire ourselves, and to let things go, let go of the labels, let go of the things that really kind of hold us down. Because I don't think the audience is looking at us in such a critical lens. You know, they want to see people on stage have fun, and I think improv is one of those. One of those few art forms. This might be a generalization. It is a generalization, but like you can tell when someone's like, "Oh, they didn't know that was going to happen," you can see that they're really surprised because someone's over their words, or like, "Oh, something happened," where the audience is in on that joke. And so, for me, I'm like, that's why play is paramount.
Yeah, I would say when gymnasts trip and fall, you're like, they didn't know that was going to happen.
It's not a warm up.
That's
I love all that. I was, there was a time when I was trying to sort out like what my own philosophy is, and like how I would approach a group of students from the ground up, and I landed on like separating, like, okay, there's improv skills and there's sense of play, and it's like skills are more, this is not a perfect separation, but the way I started thinking about it is like there's skills that you can work on that are more objective, like the checklist of who, what, where, and training your working memory, and just like the physical object work and stuff like that is like objective skills that you can like hone. But like sense of play is so subjective, but it's also so essential, and it's much harder to quantify, or it doesn't need to be like treated so much like a did you do it right or not.
Right.
Pass. Yeah. It's like an experience based thing.
That was a fail on the fun there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. So you think that's what you experienced? I don't think so. I wasn't feeling that from the outside.
You were having fun, not me though. I was sad inside, to be honest. I was.
Are you okay for your improv set? No. Improv's hard, man.
You're right. Like for me, I'm like, I think it's easier to plug in all of those things, the who, what, where, character work, and all of that kind of stuff, POV. But like, give me the person first.
Yeah.
Who's your personality? Because that's you. That is you being you.
Yeah.
In that sense, right? And so that if that's the foundation, I think that in those moments when you have those shows, which everyone is going to have those shows where you don't do as well as you want to do, and that hurts and it sucks, and you're kind of like, oh, how do I? It's easy to turn it in like, maybe I should quit improv, But for me, it's like, oh, you're able to let it go. I mean, like, oh, I'm playing this game, but there's gonna be another game. And I think that's the foundation, that there's more of a freedom within this. You're absolutely right. That sort of fixed thing of like, did I do it right, coach? That's I feel like that's more limiting, but more like, I want to have fun with you guys together. Let's build this together. Oh man, it's like, again, like me and Isaac, man, we just strap on some jetpacks and we go to town. Actually, it was playing Detroit Improv Festival, which we played. I think we played it like 7 years. I think Isaac played it like 9 years, but Two Man No Show, we played it about 7 years. And one of the producers, oh yeah, Peach asking, "Did you know Isaac?" I met him. I met Isaac. Yes, I met him. Entertaining fella. Hey, there he is. Talk about your favorite body part of Isaac. Well, I mean, how much time do we have? Isaac is actually here now. That's amazing. But one of the producers had talked about seeing me and Isaac, and they described it as watching us do like a spacewalk together. So we're two astronauts. We're about to leap into the unknown, leap into space, and we tether ourselves together and we just jump out, but we like into this absurdity. Because I remember doing shows at Go Comedy in Detroit, leaving the venue during our show to like run around, like run to the green room, run around, come through the front. I remember trying to get into a woman's purse, like to try and fit into a woman's purse. I'm a smaller guy. I'm 4'7", so it could happen. But it's like, for me, it's just fun. I love messing with the rules and the conventions, but it's like that there is an unbridled play that goes within that. That just feels good. At the end of the day, it's like, lead with that and spend less time, trying to quantify. Chris Moody's here. He said Isaac. I did say Isaac. Best body part of I think his hair. I think Isaac's got great hair now. You guys have seen his hair. It's pretty remarkable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's lush.
It is lush. Yeah.
It is lush. That's what we thought, when Diff comes, that's the first thing we have to talk about is how lush is it going to be this year? Can he outlush himself?
I can't have that conversation. I'm not part of that conversation.
Me neither.
But James, you are. You are definitely part of that.
Yeah, beer no lush.
All right. Isaac, man, we got to
have a lush off.
So I can't remember where I picked this up. Because you mentioned clown, and I know that a lot of what you and Isaac do is very clown influenced. But just talking about like the whole different prongs and skills and everything, I might have read like an interview or something with a clown, and they were talking about like there's the skill that you do, or like the sort of like whatever you juggle or you like stand on teetering stacks of whatever and unicycle circus kind of stuff, and or magic tricks, and it's like these are like hard skills that you use, but like it's lifeless without the sense of play underneath, and so it's almost arbitrary what you use as your skill or what you choose. I think in the interview or the conversation that it was like, pick something you're good at that you have a natural talent for and get really good at it, because that'll be the sort of like hook or the impressive like surface level thing. But really the magic underneath is going to be supported and magnified by your ability to play with it and the things that happen in between, however good you're going to get at it. It's a great point. I feel like if you are channeling the fun, if you can get into that state of ease, that sort of flow state-ish kind of experience, then I think the rest kind of takes care of itself, really, and all the who, what, where. Because when you're in, if you're doing a show, you're not being like, okay, that's the who, check. Now, where is the where? Like you have to. There's no time for that. That kind of like, I'm going to walk over here now. I will do. So I will participate in some object work now. Right.
So fast, you have no time for that. It's just it's integrated. And I suppose in some ways your mind is making those choices, but it's on such a rapid, you're just not, there's not the cumbersome of thinking of that. It's just like, let's just go for it. There's a real naturalness. But for me, I think at the end of the day, if there's fun underneath it, that's so much more enjoyable. It's like, that's, again, I think an audience can tell when people are genuinely having fun. Not that panicked in the green room of like, got your back. It's like, got your back. And I'm scared too. But that's the thing. Is like you follow the fun. I think the rest kind of looks after itself. I love watching like beginner improviser shows because they're like in the shit, so to speak. Like they have no idea what they're doing, like they've just learned such fundamentals, and then this is their first experience to be in front of an audience to try it out, and so it's rocky, like they're like but there's so much joy, and you can really see that they're playing to the best of their ability, and that they're really trying and really surprising themselves, and really like, oh, that's a big choice that person did, that they're risking vulnerability of like I've never been that big in front of other people before. And I dig that. And the audience is so receptive and rewarding of that as well. So again, that's why if we open the door for the audiences, how the audience is engaging with us, I think that can really boost us in a lot of ways and gives us more permission, and it more affirms you being you. And for me, at the end of the day, it's like, oh, wow, I was more of me on that stage, and it's funny because you mentioned earlier, James, the career counseling that I did. I worked in career counseling initially for 10 years, and then I got into doing full-time acting. I booked a series regular on People of Earth. So serendipitously, I stepped out of career counseling. And I remember when I was a career counselor, I felt like I was doing more acting as a career counselor than I was on an improv stage. I felt like I was more of myself when I was playing multiple characters on stage for the enjoyment of the audience. And it's kind of interesting that I'm like, now I've come back to career counseling, but I'm bringing me to it. There's no act. I'm not, I feel more of all of me is connected and integrated, and I dig that. And I've had experiences over the last 6 years of getting into meditation. And for me, that's been a big catalyst to help soothe me and to help reassure me that when I'm experiencing my thoughts and feelings and sensations, is that they're not permanent. They are ever changing, and they're not me. It's just, I quote often in the mindfulness class that I teach, a great quote by David Rosowski, who's a great improv guy down in LA, ex-Second City Main Stage in Chicago. And he's very like of the moment, very Buddhist mindset, and Isaac actually brought him to Toronto quite a few times over the last 10 years or so. And he had this great quote, is like, your brain is a liar and an asshole. I was like, oh, yeah, man, I dig that.
And it's jiffy as hell.
Oh my God. Yeah, write that one down. That's going in the book.
So,
and so again, I find it's like what has encumbered me. I remember auditioning for Second City for literally 10 years in a row after I graduated, after me and Isaac graduated from conservatory. And my auditions were not that great. So they were fair not to hire me in those moments because my self-talk, my nerves got the better of me. So I couldn't show up and be like, but you can see me last night. I did great at this other show. But because I put a lot of weight on it and expectations and hopes and a story that went along with this, that I was not able to play. I was playing a very sort of narrow focus, very sort of tunnel vision kind of thing, until I got to a place where I'm like, oh, they want to hear about me. They want to hear about my points of view and my opinions and such. Oh, I can do that, and I can replicate that. And so there was a great ease within that. And for me, I feel like improv is a great thing, a great catalyst that you can find more self-acceptance within yourself. And we got a question here.
Yeah, Kurt says, if part of being on stage is being vulnerable, do you feel being oneself on stage makes you more vulnerable off stage?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I think the more time that I'm spent, no matter if that's on an improv stage or off stage, then that's time well spent. But improv for me, because again, when I was in my teens and 20s and such, it was a real... those were hard times. I was just tons of anxiety and just really no feeling of self-esteem or worth and such. And so it was really hard to find comfortability in my own skin. But that was the repetition of doing improv classes once a week for 3 hours once a week. It was kind of like, wow, there's a place that I actually have real genuine pure enjoyment, and I'm tapping into what's fun for me. I'm figuring more of me out, and it's through creativity. And I feel like that's another huge vein to tap in that sense, is that when you're doing collaborative creativity with other people, and improv is not, ideally non-judgmental. It's accepting. Like, you got an offer, I got nothing. You got something? Oh, you got something? Great. Let's jam. So I found early on that, as I was saying earlier, that when I was learning yes and, I was learning also to say yes and in my life outside of that. And it was scary every time, going to my improv class every week was like, there was a big part of me is like, don't go, stay here, play Grand Theft Auto, buy some more properties, get some more cars, Live the life, man. Vice City.
Well, yeah.
Vice City. Where you don't have to go up there. But I wasn't.
Grand Theft Auto like Monopoly. All right.
But I also know that I wasn't happy though.
Yeah.
And there was like this. There was a safety, a status quo, but I needed change. I knew it in my bones. I needed change, but I didn't know where that was. I didn't know where it existed, so I had to sort of litmus test things and slowly put myself back out into the world sober. I quit drinking when I was 28, so that really was the thing that was like, who am I? Because so much of drinking was like there was an identity that was wrapped up within that. And so I was trying to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be. And so improv was that thing. And so early on, stepping into improv classes, which is like, I don't know how to relate to people. I don't know, like without alcohol or like at a punk gig, like this is really challenging in ways, but the work is so fun. And the foundation, I think, of the support and the encouragement, which was something I didn't necessarily have a lot of as well. It was like, it's a safe harbor to explore more of the facets of who you are. And I just think the more that you have moments, whether you affirm it for yourself or it's affirmed from other people, of like doing an improv scene and be like, hey, that was really funny. Yeah, what you did there. Hey, man, you got worth, is what people are saying. Hey, there's a place for you. Oh, cool. So maybe at first you feel like, oh, man, that one scene is actually kind of good at something for once in my life. And that spills out. And there is a growing, it's a bit of shedding of old skins and stepping into more of the possibility and the potential of who you are. And I know when I'm, say, like playing with Isaac, for example, or really connected with play and creativity, I think I'm the best version of myself. And I really like that. And for me, that becomes repeatable. That becomes, I can grow that out into my regular life. And I'm like, these are the factors, these are the qualities that I want to have more of. And it just doesn't have to exist on an improv stage. I can take this backstage. I can take this out in the parking lot. I can take it home with me. I can take it to relationships. That idea of risking, that idea of daring to fail, your relationship with failure, your relationship with being perceived by other people, saying the right thing, doing, getting things right, making mistakes. It's wonderful. Like improv is such a fertile ground to figure out more of who you can be in this world. So absolutely, Kurt, for me, it absolutely is a training ground, not just for the skills of improv, but like you can learn so much and transform as a person because of improv.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, and truly, I think one of the scariest things is probably, the road to getting there can take so long because, like you said, it's almost like everybody has to kind of have this epiphany moment that like what I need to be doing is being more of myself, not putting on garnish or what do you call it? It's very tempting in acting, performance, entertainment to like put something else on.
Yeah. I love that idea of garnish.
Garnish, yeah. There's a word on there.
Like maybe
some parsley, buddy. Yeah.
I feel like I can garnish on.
Yeah. How can I spice it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mask, right? It's like these things that like social media. Oh, I have to present a certain way, or like I have to be professional in this role or function. But and it is a process. It doesn't necessarily. I remember my first. There's moments where it's like, oh, this is it. It's so reaffirming, and then it's a process as well. And I remember I loved improv, so I just did it for 10 years, and like just jumping into classes all over the place. And I realized I'm like, oh man, I've been studying comedy for 10 years. It didn't feel like I was like, okay, I got to study comedy. I got to sit down and read this book. Like it was just fun, but it passes, and it is the process. And to use a sports analogy, I found like my hit ratio, my at bats were like, hey, well, I've had 2 good shows in a row. That's interesting, or that felt really good, and then oh, not so good, and then but It is very much of that process, and it does, as I said. I mean, it's so funny that we spend so much of our lives trying to be other people, in ways, try to hide other parts of ourselves. When in actuality, the real moneymaker is like, how do you use like your intuition in your work? That's a great question, Isaac.
That might be a serious question from Isaac.
I know.
I'm not. He's asked a lot of questions during this whole interview. That's the first one I posted in a while. I thought it was a really good one.
I cracked Isaac. I got a serious question from Isaac, man.
So I mean, and it is a good question. The question is, how do you use intuition in your work?
It's all about that. It is all about that. I mean, like, it's so funny. I'm like, I don't know where I get my ideas from, but I've learned kind of early on to not question it. And, like, I have no idea where this some of the stuff I've said in improv, I'm like, I didn't even know I knew. I'm like, why did I say it like that? That's so, because I think we're like sponges that go through the world, just absorbing information, experiences, and just collected things. It's like, and it's not even things that could serve me to go on like Jeopardy. Like I was still sucked so bad at Jeopardy, I would fail. I would daily double, but I would lose it all. But these are small little things that just reflect life. And these words, saying, expressions, things like that, I don't know where I collected them. But when I have that impulse or my intuition is just to allow it, just like not even allow it, but it's like, let's almost throw it. Like, let's get it out and like with a megaphone in that sense. So that's the thing, because there was nothing more. It's like, well, I only have one thing. Great, then say it, then to do that. And even if I don't have anything, Isaac will have something, like a serious question.
Is that something you always had, or is that something you had to build on?
It is for sure something that you have to build on, but it's still there when you learn that it's like, oh, I have an idea. And so just say that idea. And I don't like regrets. Especially when I was learning long form, like heralds and such, where there's that moment of like, you introduce walk-ons, for example, or tag outs, and you've got this like great idea and you're like, oh, all right, should I weighing my options here? Like, what's the rate of probability that this may, and then of course the moment has passed and I'm like, oh, I can't bring it back. And it's frustrating. So again, it just reaffirms that of like, if you have an idea, say it. We want to hear from you. Again, that's what I was saying. And what you're saying too, James, is this idea of like the uniqueness of you. And really, there's only one version of you. So you don't have to pretend to be anyone else. And your own unique experiences are so informative. And I think that's a good place to live from. And I'm trying to do more of that, actually, in the last couple of years in particular, to have, because I've come from a very people-pleasing background. I think that's actually why I'm a really good supportive improviser as well, because I'm like, great, whatever you want, and I'll support that 110%. But I'm looking to fill up my own space and to be like, hey, world, you got to hear more from me, because I've actually been very shy and very quiet, but I do have opinions about things. And for me, I feel like that is I'm also Canadian as well, so we're very mild. Yeah. Very polite, so it's getting comfortable with sharing more of who you are, and whatever that looks like, whatever that sounds like, and certainly whatever it feels like, the more that you can put yourself out there. And we all have to kind of do it ourselves. Like we have to kind of create our own blueprints, because however we were raised likely was not necessarily the way that we wanted it to be, or that we needed. There's certain things that we didn't get when we were younger that I think through improv we can also explore. So I think we're kind of we're creating our blueprint of who we want to be. And so for me, that's more of voicing, not just my opinions and but it's like, I want to broadcast my play. I want to take up space, and I know how it feels for me when I'm in that place. And I also love the additional sort of cherry on top of it is the audience. Not only in real time are they giving that affirmation that, laughing and really smiling and digging what I'm doing, but afterwards as well, like the real heartfelt, hey, that was really great, when like a real meaningfulness, where for people that may don't do improv or aspiring students, for example, they see you do something, they're like, I can do that. Yeah, you can totally do that, right? So it's like we're all kind of in the same game, in a sense of giving ourselves permission to be more of who I think we're really meant to be as well, and to do it in an unapologetic way with a lot of play underneath. So it's not just about me, it's all of us. We're finding a play for ourselves that I can share with the audience, and that we can grow together in a scene or as part of an ensemble.
Yeah, you talked about like when you first started taking improv classes, how it was a great environment for you to develop because you can go in there, be yourself, you felt like yourself. And I think there's something we don't nurture enough as improv teachers, is that moment when we put ourselves out there and then someone's got our back, and how freeing that is. And like, yeah, do more of that, and if you appreciate that person doing it for you. Like you said, it's so great to be a supportive person and have each other's back. And we talk about, oh, we got each other's back, but what does that actually mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We gotta physically do that. We have to, like, playing Hotspot, for example, like singing a song. I'm like, I will step in and I'm going to help support my partner. I'm going to join them. So much of improv, I think, is just joining in the fun. Oh, that was a great character. I can't do that character. Join in, be the same character, grow together. Your energy. I don't have that kind of energy. Join in, join in. And the more the merrier, as you're saying, Bob. And it's like, you get affirmed of like, wow, it feels like very altruistically, like, hey, satisfying. I helped you out, and my team goes like, thank you, and vice versa. Like you internalize it. When someone is like honoring your offer, like joining with you, or simply yes-anding your offer. If someone's like, hey, I hear and see you, and I make it matter, and I'm choosing to be affected by it, and I'm going to support you by yes-anding as well. And it's like, that's the mechanics of it. And again, like, that's the kind of stuff that you can really that spills out into your day-to-day life. So again, it's like, why would I say no to things? Why would I try to block offers? Why would I sort of diminish possibilities or opportunities? And when you catch yourself, because again, we're really good at that, to acknowledge it, and then to spend time with it, understanding more of who we are. But I find play is the thing that we can find out more of who we're meant to be.
Yeah, and I think it may be important to point out that, like, again, it's this weird, what seems like a paradox to be like more yourself, but then play freely, like, and do characters and go into absurd worlds. And so I don't know, maybe is there a different way to explain that idea where it's like, well, what we want is, whether you're doing characters and voices and you're going into fantasy worlds, like, as far from reality as it's going to get, we want it to be connected to your sense of play and not serving the idea of some other thing that you're trying to get right. Like, how do you kind of phrase that for people who are confused about how to be more themselves but still have the freedom to do whatever they want and act and go into fantasy worlds?
Yeah, a great question. I think it is that freedom to explore. And again, taking out of the equation a right or wrong within that, and dialing up levels. So again, starting, as I was saying, let's just have a conversation. Let's just practice our active listening, where we don't have to add anything on top. And then there's an exaggeration. I think comedy often comes where there's an exaggeration of something, like a big physical choice or a big emotional choice. There's usually like, oh man, that's where the comedy resides. And so, like, people can take on affectations and such. Do you have a technique or ideas on how to perform? I can tap into more freedom on stage in the moment. What? Good question. Performer can tap into more freedom on stage in the moment of actual performance. As me and Isaac do, is like, clown is such a great thing of like, we got to, and maybe at like ground zero, we got to figure out who we are as well, and like get into our bodies, like try to embody what play is. Like, I'm going to play an animal. I'm going to play like a statue. I'm going to play the word the, trying things on. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember these books when you're growing up, like, it's a book and it's like, there's the top half, the middle half, and you can flip it through.
Oh yeah. To make the different creatures and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Those are awesome.
So for me, I'm like, it's like to step away from this, like all or nothing kind of attitude, and be like, there are no consequences from doing this. We want to explore. And I think, going back to what Isaac was saying, intuitively, like, what feels good for you? Because I think from that place, I think you're going to uncork more of, again, who you really are, what's your own individual stamp. Because again, I think when we are often going through training levels, I think it's easy to like, am I doing it right or wrong?
Right.
Am I doing it the way that I'm being taught? And for me, I'm like, because again, I know my own experience of like, I was often comparing myself. I'm like, oh, I'm not getting it. I'm not like when I find myself thinking about that, I'm like, I like, again, those moments where I'm like, I just followed what felt good for me. And quite often, again, my intention is like, I do want to support, I do want to really be present for the other people. So I think, again, it's just like, what can you do to foster a sense of exploration and to grow your play. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably good. I think that's a good rule to live by. But you're right, James. Like, there are some people that have some difficulty with that. I used to give that no. I'm like, hey, man, just go and have fun. Because I understood what that meant. So if someone said that to me,
Yeah.
Like Joe Bill's like, Ken, go out and have fun. Okay, good. Thanks, Joe. Great. Good no.
Yeah, I think they should like go into more detail when they give that no.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like they made that connection.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There's a lot of people that don't actually know what that is for them. They actually haven't experienced it. So that's why I'm a big fan of clowning, because it's goofy. It's allowing you to be to embrace your inner idiot, to allow failure, to seek failure, and to be okay to survive it. And you'll fine tune, I think, over time. And it is a process. But I think the more that you can put yourself in the state, and that's why we do those warm-ups. You know, it's not just to be like, oh, we're just going to do a clever word association and feel there's such a disconnection, I think, within that. But when we're playing of like, we're going to play this together, like it's a game and it matters. But we want to all play to the best of our ability and such. It's a different, and it's a collaboration, not a competition, unless it's a healthy competition. Then like let's play. So that's one of the first things that when people step into learning clown is let's learn games, let's learn how to play. And that's the kind of approach that I take to improv, because I want to have that as the foundation. Because when you're not getting it, you're going to self-support yourself more. You're like, great, I'll let it go. And again, once you begin to get introduced to your sense of play and to figure out what that looks like and sounds like, putting yourself in, different shapes, exploring, taking on things, I just think you've got more agency to choose what feels good for you in the moment. And it takes a lot of the head work out of it. And that's why I think it was sort of what Isaac was asking, is like more of the intuition. And I think that's a good thing to self-support yourself, to yes and your own offers, in addition to your scene partner, but you got to yes and, I think, yourself in that. And it's fostering play with yourself, fostering with your scene partner. And I think, again, bringing the audience into the play. They're sitting right there. There is no wall, they are literally sitting there. So it's like, hey, let's include them in the mix. It is a process. Yes, Bob.
You mentioned earlier, like students tend to think a little bit ahead of time. So I think they're concentrating too much on content rather than the exploration or surprise or discovery or any of that stuff that it's kind of attached to play.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've noticed, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I also noticed this, actually. I mean, me and Isaac have talked about this. An audience listens in different ways. When me and Isaac are playing, and you've seen us do our ridiculous thing, like when, oh, man, I remember we did an MC Escher-ish kind of set at DIF, at Detroit Improv Festival. And it was just so fun. It's because we're like lying on the ground. We're trying to move, like putting our bodies in different shapes and such. And I think the audience is in on games. I think intuitively an audience understands game and play and pleasure, and an audience is listening in a different way when it's more so based on narrative and exposition as well. The audience has to kind of roll up their sleeves and like, like I have to really be present. The audience got to roll up their sleeves.
I love that.
Here we go.
Talking, huh?
Yeah.
This is a Herald. Oh boy, here we go. Oh my God. 2 minutes. Ooh, we're at third beats. What happened? Oh my gosh. But I just think it's such an easy invitation, easy contract with the audience where there's game and play. I don't even mean game in the scene. I just mean game. Like, we're going to play this game. And that's what me and Isaac do, because we're playing a game that is in conjunction with the audience. And it just feels good. And it's so simple. in when you agree, this is a game, let's play this game. Great, that's it. We don't have to worry about the. I think we often fall into the trap of trying to be clever and smart, and I just know my brain doesn't really operate, and I don't see. I see story in a different way.
And real quick, Ken, sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned you're talking about game here in a different way than a lot of people. You know, UCB put a whole different spin on it than some of the in the world of like clown that has a very different meaning. So I'm wondering if you can kind of differentiate between like clown as game in that context, that like what you and Isaac are thinking and looking for in game versus like game of the scene as UCB might define it.
Yeah, exactly. So game of the scene generally is like, oh, what's the first unusual thing that happens in a scene? Oh, great. And then we begin to heighten that idea. For me, and when we play with Isaac, for example, like we find a game to play that's fun for us to do. So like where we come out and we do, or actually I remember I was talking with someone recently about our first show and how we ended our show because we didn't have enough content for a 60-minute show. It was our first 2-man show, actually. And we ran it the first time 2 days before we opened, and we were supposed to have like 60 minutes. We had 40 minutes. So we're like, we need 10 plus minutes of material. So like, what can we do? I don't know. Like, what? Like, I think as you suggested, we just do multiple curtain calls. So we finished the show, big dance, and it was a lovely ending. It was we did the ending of Dirty Dancing, so the big lift, climactic lift, and then we're like, great, thanks everyone, good night, waving, cheering. Then we run backstage, wait a moment, and then we run back out, and the audience is like, oh great, I guess sure, another curtain call, but we just kept on doing it. And it was a necessity, but at the same time, the audience is kind of like, oh, these idiots are going to keep on doing this. And then the other extension of that was that we got on these mics in the back to pretending as if we had a lavalier mic, or a clip mic was still on, and then we'd just start talking about people in the audience. I'm like, hey man, good show. So it's the most anticlimactic way of finishing a show. So we're just running the clock out until our director Mark Andrada was like, guys, your mics are on. And that's how the show would end. But we'd have people that would like, there's one guy getting up and he's like, they're just going to keep on talking. But it was a game for us to play, so we're just going to play that game. So, but within that game too, we can heighten it. We can, have an elaboration of it. We can do it in different ways, but it's like one idea. We're just playing this one idea, this one game, and we're going to play it to the best of our ability until it changes and morphs into a next moment, into a new beat. Mm-hmm. And so that's, for me, that's an easy way for me to understand improv. In comedy and such, because again, I just don't think my brain is wired in the way that is really good at narrative and premise and who, what, where, and all of that sort of caretaking. And I know a lot of people are, and it's amazing. I love playing with them because I'm like, you do that part, I'll do the goofy clown, silly, fun stuff, and it's a lovely compliment. So for me, that was, and I also say this too, that was my version of play. And you mentioned the UCB people, the game of the scene. Some of them are so good, like Chris Gethard, for example, so good. Like he understands it. Like that's his state of play. He's found the thing that really works well for him. Joe Bill, as I was saying earlier, like he's found his thing that works really well. Susan Messing, same thing. David Rosowski. I think everyone all over time eventually will find what works best for them. And so that's why there's also a lot of room under this big tent to find out what works best for you. And for me, at the end of the day, it's like whatever like, lights you up, whatever that gives you passion, whatever makes you laugh. That's probably a good route to take.
All right, we got another one from Isaac. If you had the power to change or include something in the global curriculum of improv, what would it be? With an actual curriculum and or with how a teacher teaches?
That's great.
Well, yeah. Well, hang on. I feel bad. I want to get Moody's in here because he has to one. We've heard quite a bit from Isaac.
People are similar. But these questions are great. So for Isaac, I would like again. I love what I'm doing. Personally, for me, this works, and this is how I see the world of improv. Again, is teaching more of the clown-based things. So I'm actually teaching adults how to play, and that's really it. And improv is almost a secondary thing. I'm doing it through improv, but it's like teaching adults how to play, how to be themselves more on the stage, sharing your thoughts, your opinions, your points of view, vulnerability, risk. What can I do to help set them up to experience that in a supportive way? That would be the kind of curriculum. And as what Moody was saying there too, I think he was asking, do I prefer to play with people that have the same reference levels, or
do you prefer to play with improvisers who have similar or different reference levels? Which again, an addendum from Isaac as reference and or experience.
Isaac is learning a lot. I think he owes us $2,000.
Isaac is here to take notes.
Isaac owes us $2,000. That's what
this is great. I would say, I quite enjoy. I love the unknown. I love playing with people that I'm like, I have no idea who this person is or where they're like. For me, there's such a lovely element of surprise because again, I feel like I'm very adaptable to where any person is, and I know that foundation of like I'm going to be supporting whatever this person does, and I'm going to be pursuing play, and I'll try and grow it with this person. So, so for me, it's I do enjoy that. So I'm very wide open, but I'm also thinking in terms of like the stuff that me and Isaac do, where we we know and love a lot of the same things, a lot of the same pop culture references, Jurassic Park, Total Recall, a lot of things that went into our movies, sci-fi. Like we often have similar, John Wick, all these kind of things that we love equally. So that's a bit of a shorthand. When I'm playing with Isaac in particular, he's like, I know Isaac so well, and vice versa. He knows me so well. So we there's things that I can reference that I know he will have an intimate experience of, and we'll be able to, so we can set each other up within that. But for me, I'm like, I just love playing with everyone. Really. I mean, that's all it is like playing, like I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, so I'm like, you want to play with me? Great. All right, let's do it. So there, there's also that, that I don't bring in that sense of, I'm not a very clever, I don't know, I can be, but I don't have references, it's, and so much of it is not even about the references so much, but it's more about, again, the relationship and what is happening between the two people in the moment. And if I don't know the references, I can be like, great, I don't know that reference. Tell me about that reference. Maybe I should learn references, so it's all good no matter where it goes. So even if I don't know the person's reference, we can still have a lot of fun within that as well. Great questions.
Yeah. You got time for one more, Ken? I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we're over 2:00 here. So let me know. Do you got to go?
No, I don't. I don't know. I'm going to head up to Isaac's, I think. After,
Oh, perfect.
Well, we got another question for Isaac. So
yeah. This is from Moody about you and Isaac as it happens. So Chris Moody is asking, you and Isaac always seem to have fun on stage. Can you think of a time when you had no fun on stage? And again, tacked on from Isaac.
Yes, it could be answered to C. Yes, very good. It's a great question. I mean, the great thing is there's always play, but I know for sure me and Isaac have been witness to very tough shows. A few years ago, we had the first time went to Washington, D.C. to play in the Improv Festival there, and we were actually the opening act. And so we tried to, we just started kind of out of the gate. And again, because we're so mindful of the audience and their experience, we know when you're flopping, we know this is not going well. So we started out in this over the top absurdist stuff, standing on chairs, and audience wasn't having any of it. So it was in those moments, it's tough. But at the same time, we can have a lot of fun in the mere fact that it's a terrible show. I think one of my favorite terrible shows where I still ended up having a ton of fun, even though it was a terrible show, was that one of our in the first year that we toured back in 2010, we performed at the New York City Frigid Fringe Festival. And we had 2 shows in a row where we had 2 people in the audience. And the first show was great. We had 2 people who were also performers of part of the festival, and they were sitting front row. We got them up at the end of the show, dancing with them as part of the show. And then the second show right after, like the next day was two people, and it was one of Isaac's, I think it was Isaac's first crush. Isaac, was that your first crush? I think. And
I remember him telling me this.
with her husband, who's like this big, like sort of like, I think, ex-army guy kind of thing, and they had no pop culture references, and they sat halfway back in the theater. They're the only people in the theater. They sat halfway back, and they had no pop culture reference. They'd never seen Dirty Dancing, Jurassic Park, Total Recall. They had no idea. And I remember Isaac doing Jurassic Park, where he becomes a dinosaur, and he's supposed to like take a sip of water and then spit it in my face as one of the like dinosaurs, right. Having to sneeze on me. So he took a drink and it just like dribbled out of his mouth because we're both laughing at how bad the show was going. It was terrible. It was one of the worst shows we've ever done. But we're again, it's the tethering. We're together in this moment. So even though we're failing, we're bombing, there's nothing we could do to salvage it. Nothing. And they're sitting with their arms crossed, halfway back, no expression on their face of any encouragement whatsoever. But we can still have fun in those moments. It's hard fun, you know, but it's like, again, it's just like, I play with Isaac, as you guys know. It's like, he makes it really easy to play and to goof around, because that's Isaac's often his default, especially on the stage. And so, you know, in those moments where even an audience is not having what we're doing, you know, it's still like, that's our thing. It's like, we're going to try and have fun. If we can make each other laugh, and because we've done so many ludicrous things over the years that no improv theater in good standing would ever teach. It's like, why would you leave the venue? Why would you leave your own venue during a show? Like, and we've done that a couple times. We did that in Philadelphia, actually, during a big tropical storm, and we come back on stage and we're soaked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Again, it was fun. It's fun for us, and that's the underpinning for me. Again, I just want to emphasize, like, and Susan Messing says this too. Like, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. You know what I mean? So, like, you can course correct, and it's sometimes easier said than done. And life happens where you're kind of like, oh man, I'm so stressed out, or you're just feeling really negative that day. That's real. That's a real place to be. But rather try to, you know, try to push those feelings away. Maybe there's a way that you can bring that into the set, you know, instead of denying what it is you're feeling. Maybe we can jam with it. Maybe we can turn it into play. Like when Isaac gets enraged, you know, there's a playfulness behind it. And so that's something that we can explore. So that would be my invitation for everyone too, is like, you know, to try and weather those storms, be good to yourself. And if play, I can be both nervous and anxious and fearful and feeling negative sensations, but I can also have space for play. And I find that the two can also cancel each other out. And more, or even like the balance, the play. So I can have both of those experiences. And so when I'm not having fun, what can I do to reconnect with that sense of play? So jumping into a clown class, I think, or like, you know, giving yourself another kind of doing something differently, experimenting, but not taking it on yourself as if there's anything deficient with you. It's not about that. Just, again, your mind is a liar and an asshole. And so if you can sidestep that, just the realization of it, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Great. Now we can have fun. So it's there always, and that's our goal, is to try to recreate that sense of play every single time we hit the stage. And it's like, we got a new audience every time. Hey, who's here? You know, how are we feeling today? You know, oh great, you know, let's create it. We don't know, we're not doing the same thing every night. So it's like, this is going to be unique in its own right. And maybe you're gonna have those shows where it's like dark, heavy, you know, that's cool too. It's all good.
Yeah, there's so much in here that I love just hearing you talk about. Ken, thanks so much for a really great conversation and for sticking around to answer some of those additional questions. Speaking of classes that people could take to take a different angle on what they're doing in improv, you got your mindfulness workshop through Bad Dog Theater in Toronto virtually. Do you have some of those coming up?
I'm teaching one. Yeah, in September. I'm currently teaching one right now. The next round will probably be starting up in September. I'm also teaching a comedic on-camera acting class through Bad Dog as well, which will be starting up in September too. I teach public speaking at Second City, teaching like improv and conservatory at Second City. So take one of my classes anyway, and you're gonna get the same flavor. Even if I'm teaching mindfulness or improv or public speaking or clown, it's still filtered in the play. It's still you're gonna have a good time and hopefully learn some stuff at the same time.
Yeah. And I've heard such great things about you as a teacher too. We've had people on here and just people that I've met through, like here in New York, that you are a mutual friend of. Speak very highly of you as a teacher. So if anyone gets a chance, yeah, definitely highly recommend it. And we'll if you have links and stuff to post once those are up, look for September, everybody. We'll have them listed in this episode. Thanks again, Ken. For everyone else,
Thanks, PJ.
So, yes.
Just saying thanks to the people in the chat there.
Oh, gotcha.
Thanks, Moody. Great seeing everyone. Thanks for having me. And congrats. What episode is this one? Hey, Brent. Which number is this?
96, 97.
96. Wow. Congrats, guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, for our audience, remember to go to theimprovnetwork.org and just check out additional resources from the Improv Network. And if you have additional questions, recommendations, or requests for guests and topics and things like that, you can email us at james@theimprovnetwork.org or bob@theimprovnetwork.org. And yes, thanks again for everyone who asked questions and kept the conversation lively. We appreciate it, and we will catch you next time. As opposed to us dead fish just sitting here trying to figure out what we're talking about. It would have been no fun. Trust me, I know. All right, everyone. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time on the Improv Network podcast. Bye.